If I gave you $100 and asked you to give it away, you wouldn't have a problem. But if I gave you $100,000 and asked you to give it away, now you have a problem. That's the difference between generosity and philanthropy. If you want to learn how to become a philanthropist, this interview will help. It'll outline the problems that you'll be faced with and a methodology that you might use to become an intelligent philanthropist. Enjoy. Oh, welcome to the Charlie Paparelli Show. I'm Charlie Paparelli. Today's guest is a friend, Curt Kane, and our topic today is moving from generosity to philanthropy. I was talking to my friend Curt, who is recently retired as a fractional CFO. He told me he's now helping generous donors decide where they should give their money. And it was kind of a fluke on how he got there. It was unexpected. It wasn't a plan, but that's what he's doing right now. And I wanted to know more, and that's why I invited him to be interviewed. This is a topic that is interesting to me for two reasons. One is I have observed in my lifetime that people who are good at making money are generally not very good at giving that money away. Not that they're not generous, they just don't know how to do it because they're always focused on the making the money side. And the second reason this is interesting to me is if that person who's made money and accumulated wealth wants to give the money away, how do they go about deciding who to give the money to or what cause they should support? I think it's a big problem. I know it's a big problem for me. I'm actually going with Kathy to a National Christian Foundation conference on this very subject. You know, what breaks your heart? Where should I be giving my money? So welcome, Curt. Hopefully you're going to be able to enlighten us with some of your most recent experience on this. I'm glad you're here.
Glad to be here, Charlie.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit, just again, is maybe a little bit about your career so we get a little bit of a beat on you, on who you are, and then how you kind of moved into retirement.
Great question. I spent most of my career, actually, the last 30 years, as a CFO and a CEO of software companies in the Atlanta area, and really love the tech community. And that's how, Charlie, you and I met through High Tech Ministries.
Right.
Served on the board together many years ago.
Yeah, we got the High Tech Prayer Breakfast coming up here, you know?
Right, the biggie.
Week from Friday.
And so it's been a wonderful journey, and you got that type A driven, let's go. Starting to think about retirement, it's a daunting sort of prospect. And so this started actually a couple of years ago. I started studying what makes up a successful retirement. And, all the typical stuff you read about, make sure your numbers are in order. But what really came through again and again was this thought of what are you going to retire to, not just from.
Got it.
And, we all got the from answer easily, but retiring to is a little bit different. And so I launched into a process of what is God calling me to, and not just from, as I look at this next phase of my life. Because we those of us who retire, it's not like you stop living. You spend a lot of hours doing something. What are you going to do it? And how is it going to be impactful for the kingdom of God? And that was really my question. And in that process, it led me to.
I'll tell you though, the one thing that I found is that it's really difficult, this process too, because we think that we've made a lot of decisions through our life with regard to our careers. But the fact of the matter is, for 40 to 50 years, we're locked on a set of tracks, just like everybody else, doing what everybody else does. Mm-hmm. We're heads down. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like you're 21 again, coming out of college. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with your life?
Right.
And it's, what? I never had to make that decision for 50 years. And now I got to make this decision? That's the daunting prospect, I think, of retirement. Do you agree with that?
I agree. And our traditional guardrails that we have no longer apply within the retirement world, right? It's not like, okay, we'll look up on, Indeed or LinkedIn what the opportunities are, and blah, 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 or deal with the headhunters or whatever is, your kind of your
Where
rhythm.
is it? There isn't an infrastructure in place or a process that says, okay, here's how you kind of move along, right?
That's right. And so
Yeah.
what happens? A lot of people flounder, and a lot of people, including yours truly, we retire and then we go back to work. We retire again and go
Right.
back to work. And so I saw that a lot with friends that either were very dissatisfied, disillusioned, they went back to work, and just struggling with because it's just a very
But
different
what's
adventure.
interesting, tell me this. The ones that went back to work, did they then, so they retreated back to the familiar? Did
Right.
they find safety there, or did they continue to feel uncomfortable, like this isn't right now either?
Well, I think it's back to your comfort zone. Surely that's what pulls them back in, right? They know how to make money, they know how to deliver results,
Right.
get the accolades that the world gives for their particular function, or job. But I think in the heart, most of us say, listen, I'd really like to do it differently in this next phase. I don't want to just keep going on. Nobody went to their deathbed and said, I wish I worked more, right? But this is a new phase and it ought to be lived differently. And we have freedom to live it differently. So what does that look like? And there are not a lot of rules to the road. There's not a lot of infrastructure, as you said. We're going to have to embark upon it each and ourselves on our
The
own
other
rhythm.
thing, yeah, but the other thing this was the big one for me is when you're in a job, when you're that fractional CFO, okay, or you're an angel investor like I was, okay, and you're doing these, you're you have something to think about. There's problems that you have to solve. There's goals that have to be achieved. There's steps and milestones have to be put in place.
Right.
There's people problems that come up. There's all that. So your mind is constantly thinking about all that.
Right.
Once you cross that boundary line and now you're into this retirement, the big question is, what should I be thinking about? I don't have anything that's placed on me to think about, right? I just got this, just think about, you think about what? Nothing? What do you think about? How do you consume that? And that goes back to you. I wanted to do what God had for me next and what would glorify him. And what you're asking was, I want to make sure that whatever you give me to think about does that.
Right.
But how do you get to what should I think about?
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, we back up and say none of us want to just go out to pasture, right? And I'm certainly
Right,
not a
right.
guy that's just going to sit on the porch in a rocker and read a book a day. That just doesn't work for me, right? I want to go add value. I want to have purpose. I want to solve problems, and ultimately to serve God's kingdom.
So
And
how
so
did you get?
that's what
So
drives me.
what came your way? I mean, you're praying about this. So what came your way that kind of started to make that
Well,
seemed to maybe form itself as the right answer
Well,
for
I tell
you?
you, the right answer came not just me sitting there waiting as I was knocking a lot of doors. I visited a lot of ministries, I visited a lot of nonprofits, and there was one that just resonated for me. And it resonated from not only my shape and how God's put me together and gifts and talents, but my passion and what I wanted to do. And it's a ministry from our church. I go to Perimeter Church.
I want you to
And
back up for a second. Tell me a little bit about that journey.
yeah,
So tell me, you decided to knock on doors of and start visiting with nonprofits?
correct, correct.
Tell me about that.
So again, it goes back to the two. What am I going to retire to? And so, what does that look like? It's going to look like partnering somewhere somehow, right? It
Okay, go
started
ahead.
within my church and then ministries outside the church, talking to them, saying, "What are you doing? What problems do you solve? How do people volunteer and
Okay.
support your organization?" Right? And
What
there's
did you what did you find? Like which? So you went to mostly Christian
yes,
ministries?
mostly Christian. Yeah, in fact, all
Okay,
Christian. I would say, yeah, all
all
Christian.
Christian
Yeah.
ministries. And what were you discovering in that process?
You know what I discovered is that if they are a growing nonprofit, that the growth creates challenge and opportunities, and they need talent to help solve those challenges and opportunities. I
Huh.
think some of them didn't know. I said, well, hey, we got shelves you can go clean out and restack the, cans of soup. And others would say, gosh, I'd really love to sit down and have a conversation with you. What does that look like? Um,
So
and
you got growth ministries, and then we'll call it just maybe stable.
well, some are growth, but they don't know what to do. Their mindset for volunteers is go stack the shelves, right? And others would say, oh no, let's sit down and have a conversation.
So you discovered that a lot of them, they don't know what to do with an executive.
Yeah, I think that's
They
right.
don't.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So if, but you're saying, well, you said a couple of things. One is growth ministries have needs.
Yeah.
Okay. They might think they just need more people to put cans in boxes like at food bank. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what they need is something much more than that. They need strategy. They need these executive skills. They need your network even, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then you got those that don't have any growth. And maybe that's all they do need is somebody to put cans in boxes or
Right.
stack shelves, like you said.
Right.
So I guess one thing that you discovered is when you went to them is they don't know how to deal with somebody like you.
Or they just they're locked in a certain mindset of like all of us, we got a square hole and we need a square peg to go in the square hole, right? We need
Oh,
somebody who's used to raising money. We need a business development person, right?
okay.
Something like that, right? Um, so sometimes you're out there looking and you are a round peg, and sometimes you don't fit in the square hole, and so you just keep having those conversations.
So then how did this start
Well, then,
how did it start to present itself that you said this is wrong? What when you saw
yeah.
something this is wrong, what was wrong? And when you saw something that this is maybe right, what was right?
Well, I think what was right was something that captured my passion and attention, that also I was uniquely shaped and had experience that applied, right? So, as a CFO and as a GM, I had a certain level of experience and certain skill sets. And when they start saying, hey, we need somebody that could use these sort of skill sets and experience, then it started to feel like it was fitting better.
So I would say that I was thinking about what you just said is so you go to a ministry, you say that's interesting what they're doing, and then you get to, oh, I see what problems they have,
Mhm.
and you actually get to, I can do that as a
And and
as a step process. Is that
yeah,
what you
but
went
some
through
of you
then?
look at it and say, hey, you may see the need, but I don't have a passion for that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And hey, we only got so much road ahead of us. You want to make sure you're doing something you're really passionate about.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
So that was a biggie too. Um,
So what did you find
and
that
so
all of a
what
sudden lit up Curt Kane here?
Yeah, what I found was Perimeter Church had a ministry called Kingdom Investments. And so Perimeter really wants to impact the world around them and do it outside the four walls. So Perimeter sets aside a good bit of capital every year to give away to the community.
Okay.
And they do it through a separate organization called Kingdom Investments. And I had been part of the ministry before, loved it. And typically, you get a shot to do it for a couple of years, and they like to recruit business people onto the organization, onto that board, to help guide them and direct them on what's the best way to invest God's resources to get God-sized returns out in the world. And so I had served in that ministry and would love to go back again, but you kind of do it once and then you move on. Well, they had an opening coming up, unbeknownst to me, had an opening where the chairman was going to roll off, and they were looking for somebody who had served on the board before, was passionate about this sort of concept, and would be interested in a chairman role. And I said, that fires my rockets, because here's really the paradigm for Kingdom Investments. It gets money from Perimeter Church and it goes out into the marketplace and says, okay, where can we find opportunities to partner with nonprofits and invest in them, not from an equity perspective and a financial return, but
Right.
to grant them money, give them money, and help them take a jump step in what they're trying to do in their ministry. And and you get involved in a lot of wonderful ministries in Atlanta. It's been great, and outside Atlanta actually too. So a lot of neat
That's
ministries.
interesting, though. Is so they're a center point, being Perimeter Church. These ministries know to go to this Kingdom Investment Group,
Yes,
so they have a lot of inbound traffic.
there's an ecosystem out there. They're well aware of Kingdom
Okay.
Investments, but we limit them. They can only come once every 3 years, so it's not like they come every year. We don't want to create dependency out there. That's an important part of charity work, is trying to help ministries develop and grow and stand on their own 2 feet and not be dependent. So we only grant a ministry once every 3 years
Oh, you'll only give a grant every once in 3 years if
to a
you approve
particular
of the
ministry.
ministry.
Yes,
Is that right?
that's right.
So it's not something that you're continuing to give to through.
Correct.
Oh,
We're
wow.
we're not trying to do ongoing support. We're trying to help ministries provide funding to them to really take a catalytic move and a step up in their overall ministry, to launch. Maybe it's a new sector, or enter a new geography, or add on a new capability. We're
How
really
much is
trying to help.
the investment? Is there a range for that investment?
Yeah, the range will be from 25,000 on the low end to 150 to 200,000 on the high end.
So 25 to 200.
Right.
Or 250, you said.
Yeah, we've done 250. It's
Okay,
been a
250.
while, not recently.
Yeah, but I could see now because you used the word catalytic change. Okay, you're looking to make a difference. You're not going to do it by giving somebody $1,500.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a good chunk of change to really help make a difference.
So what is that? So these people, they come to you with, they get coached on how to come to you, and business plans, or
Yep, they got to fill out a business plan. They got to have a budget. Hey, good CFO, got to make sure there's a budget in there. They have
yeah.
to have a good strategic plan and a good thought process of what is the problem they're trying to solve. How are they going to go about solving it, and how are we going to do that in a holistic manner that involves the head, hearts, and hands of Christ into the marketplace.
Well, what about one of the things that I always found with nonprofits? They can talk about catalytic change.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, these guys do have vision, do have growth, but they don't have the people resources, if you will,
Yeah.
right? The right people that could actually get them there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So how do you before you give somebody $250,000 or $100,000? I mean, you got to say you got to somehow judge this person capable of getting there.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't sound like the church, or this kingdom investment, as you call it, is offering that. It's just offering money.
Right. However, we are coming alongside them in many different ways. So sometimes it is not uncommon when an organization puts forth a grant, it doesn't get accepted the first time around, because maybe it's missing a leg of thought, or it's missing detail, where we're really asking them to think much more deeply about how they're going to try to execute on this plan. We almost always meet with the leadership of the
Yeah.
organization and talk with them about.
Prior to the investment.
Oh, absolutely, prior
Okay.
to.
Go ahead.
always
Go ahead.
Prior to, about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and then after the granting
That's
process.
we would call that due diligence, right?
Absolutely, in our world we call it due diligence.
Okay, good.
And so we do a lot of due diligence, and then we do follow up after the grant. There's a reporting cycle every 6 months. They've got to come back to us and tell
Oh,
how
okay.
they're investing the money. Did they actually execute on the plan? And you know what? The reality is things change. So it's not uncommon for them to come back and say, something happened, and so we want to amend the grant. Is that okay? And we work with them. And sometimes things go really poorly. And so we have to partner with them and say, okay, what do we do together? How are we going to pull out? And so we want to make sure.
Where do you get the we're going to do it together? Where do you get the together people from your side?
From the Kingdom Investment Board. Yeah.
The board. How big is the board?
The board is made up of 6-7 individuals. And then there's a full-time, kind of a 1.5 full-time people at Perimeter that help make this happen.
So you're saying, wait a second. So you got 6-7 guys on the board, people on the board. I say guys, I shouldn't say guys. 6-7 people on the board. One of the things you got to be worried about is if you do make a bad choice,
Mhm.
then you're going to be in that nonprofit. I mean, you're going to be involved much more than you have expected. Okay,
Yeah, we
because
try to
you
meter
got to be
our
really
involvement.
careful. In other words, there's a self-governing piece to this, right?
That's right. Yeah, yeah. We don't. I would say first of all, they don't normally go awry. Okay, they normally go if we do our due diligence correctly, but things don't always happen, fall out.
Yeah,
But I'd say as things have gone awry, I can think of one particular situation in the last 3 years that has gone awry. It just meant we met with. You know, we met with the executive director, we met with various members of the board, and we constructed a plan and we provided guidance on how to put together a plan and prove the plan for recovery. So, but we didn't actually go run the nonprofit, not at all.
well, I'm not saying you'll run it, but if it turns into a problem because you didn't do good due diligence or do it right, or missed whatever it might be,
Mm-hmm.
you could find yourself spending more and more time there, not to run it, but to kind of get it right tracked, if
You
you
can
will. And
this
you only got 6 people, so it's not. So you got to be really careful in that due diligence
you got
process.
to be really careful in the due diligence. Now,
Does that
hey,
push you to like, what's the budgets on the typical ministry that you might, uh, you know, give a grant to? You follow
wide
me?
range. Although I would say, using our vernacular, we act more like a VC rather than a PE. Okay, we're typically more early stage
Good.
organizations. We typically wouldn't give to larger ones, although we have. I mean, there are some outstanding nonprofits in Atlanta that do extraordinarily well, and they get bigger and bigger, but they continue to produce outsized results for the kingdom. We'll still get behind them and do things.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. So you did this. So first of all, that was the other question I had is how many, what's the like total number? You said you do between 25 and 250,
Yeah,
and these are annual cycles you go through, right?
right.
So how much in total, think as a VC again.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
how much in total do you have to give? It's more than the board. You have
That,
other people that are
that's
involved with it.
correct. Yeah, that's correct.
So you can get a report and then you can call somebody within a department of Perimeter Church and say, hey, what's going on with your nonprofit that you sponsor? Okay. I mean, because it sounded like angel investing, right? All of a sudden, I used to kid about Sig Mosley. How long you been chairman?
I came in as chairman a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but
And
and
then
just actually last December. So just not
shy of a year.
yeah, shy of a year. Yeah.
Okay. 9 months. So what happens? So is this all you've been doing?
So what happened then is kind of a really interesting story, Charlie. Kind of as your opener kind of led to it. So I started sharing with people what I'm doing, and I love it. I tell you, hey, who wouldn't love to give away money to growing ministries in Atlanta and around the globe and get involved, and you get to hear wonderful stories. I mean, stories that are just incredible, and go see things I would never go see ever, right? I'll give you an example of one. I'll leave the ministry name out. They were building capabilities and a facility to help house young girls coming out of the sex trade of Atlanta,
Okay.
giving them a place to go where they could get meals, they could get health care, they could get education, get them back in school, and get them also, of course, therapy and counseling for them and for their families. And they came to us and said, we're building this out, and we're also realizing we're leaving young males on the street. There's no place for them to go. And so we helped fund,
Because
build a
young
wing.
males are being trafficked too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, big time in Atlanta.
Okay.
And so we helped fund a wing for them to house young males so they had a place to go besides juvie hall so that they could get care and education and therapy.
Oh,
You know?
wow.
And so, so I got to go visit the site. Well, they don't want to hand out the site location, right? Because if the pimps find out where they're storing these
Yeah.
resources, so you have to go through a background check just to get an invitation to go to the site to visit.
Good
I
for
mean,
them.
so I'm going
Good for
places I've
them.
never been before, and you're looking at darkness. There's some darkness going on in this world, but also you're looking at the light that we can bring in, and we can help fund ministries that are doing incredible work for the sake of God's kingdom here in Atlanta and around the world.
So this is like you started this by saying that it's amazing how I've been exposed through Kingdom Investment and Perimeter Church to some phenomenal ministries.
Yes.
Okay. So because and then you start talking to
Friends.
people about what you're doing.
Right.
So
Right.
they're sitting there and going, they must be saying, well, I want to give away money, but I don't know where to give it. I don't know. I mean, because you think about it, you are flat footed. You've been making money all your life.
Yeah.
And now you become convinced, okay, that I should be giving back some of this money, right? I want to invest in some of these into
Right.
nonprofits or whatever. Being a person of wealth, you say, well, now what do I do? I don't hang out in those corners, right?
Right.
So it looked like you had something to offer them because of the work that you're doing at Perimeter.
Exactly right. So as I was sitting there over breakfast, sharing what I was doing with one particular individual, and this is a high net worth individual that's got a family foundation, but the wheels aren't running for the charitable giving side, and he's busy working, continuing to work, and he has a passion for impacting the world for God's kingdom, but he just doesn't have the arms and legs and time to go out and make these sorts of investments. And as you said earlier, use the word due diligence, because that's exactly right. We do a lot of due diligence at Kingdom Investments. And so anybody who wants to donate money, they want due diligence. They
Yeah,
want
but
somebody.
the problem is even worse than that. When you're flat footed like he is,
Mhm.
is it's not even that I won't do the due diligence or don't know how to do it, but let's assume that I don't. Okay, or assume that I do rather. How do you even identify?
Right.
So you got no deal flow. If you to use angel investment terms,
Right.
you've got no deal flow.
Right.
So I mean, I'm not opposed to doing due diligence, but I just don't have any deal flow. I don't even know who to talk to.
Right.
Okay, so but let me roll back just another step. You said they want to give money to impact, for impact locally for the kingdom of God. Okay.
Right.
Where did that come from? Tell me a little bit about their base philosophy or what they've learned, because these are people, they may be Christians, they are Christians, probably they know you.
Yeah.
How did they come around to the fact that, they need to be generous?
Well, I think first of all, if God's come in and impacted your life, and all the things He's done for us, what we want to do is we want to give back. I mean, that's just the core tenet of all of us that have come to understand really what God has done for us. We want to give back to God because
So God's given me all this blessing.
Right. How can I then turn bless others? Right. And so I think that really hasn't.
But that's a really scary question. Okay. It's one of the, so how can I go then and bless others? You either well, just go and start doing it. Well, I don't even know where to start. And I have a full-time job over here that I'm already doing this thing. Right. And we're involved, my family foundation's involved in real estate, and we're involved in businesses, and I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it, but I don't have time for it.
Exactly.
That's, I think, the base.
That's it. I think anybody could kind of do what I do. It's just they don't have time for it. Right? They just don't have time. And then what happens, Charlie, is I then start getting involved in an ecosystem. I start attending these dinners and I start meeting people that then start generating new ideas. And maybe that idea may not work within Perimeter Church's Kingdom Investments, but it might work with, donor number one. And he might say, gosh, I really love to give to that kind of opportunity. Curt, go investigate it further. Let's see what they have, right?
So tell me what that process is. So these people, you're sitting over breakfast, mm-hmm. and you tell them, and they go like, "Oh my God, I think I really use your help."
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the first thing. I'm not sure where to give.
Mm-hmm. Well, what
do you do with that? So here I am. You're talking to me. I'm there. Okay, I'm not sure where to give.
Well, I would say start here's and listen. I'm early on. Okay, we got what, maybe 9 months worth of experience here. So I'm sharing you my early journey and what
That's
I've learned.
good. That's good. I
But what
love
I've
it.
what I've
Let's
learned
learn
is
together, okay?
what I've learned is, it starts with strategy, right? What's your strategy? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? And with one individual, we sat down and we went through and said, okay, what are your passions? Okay, and so we worked through the passion thing. Then we said, okay, how much do you want to give? Then how do you want to allocate your giving against those passions? So we then kind of set up a grid and a target. We want to give X% to A, Y% to B, Z% to C, right? So we kind of set up some targets and some goals, but more important, set up to what are their passion. And maybe their passion is, and by the way, we set up something, and after about 6-9 months, we said, wait a second, we forgot about this, right? I really would like to go do something in this sector. Okay, great. I'm flexible, right? So we then start researching, and some of
Oh,
it I had to kind of start from ground zero. I would call, say, hey, who does this type of work? Others, I had acquaintances.
all right. Well, let's roll this back a little bit. Yeah, let me just repeat back what I heard from you
Mhm.
because I think this is really good. So, one of the things that makes you attractive is like you're in this whole new network that I have nothing to do with, that has nothing to do with me, and I have nothing to do with it, right? I'm the family foundation business guy. Okay, good.
Right.
Okay. Then you say, what are you trying to accomplish? Okay. I said, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to accomplish glorify God, or maybe I'm not sure. I mean, what do you do with the guy that starts with, what are you trying to accomplish? And we didn't get to passion yet.
Yeah.
Okay. What are you trying to accomplish? And I'm like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Help me with this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
know
and
I want to give it back. I mean, I've been blessed. I want to be a blessing to
right.
others. That's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Right.
Start get me closer to the ground. Help me here.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I tell you, part of this is just leveraging off of some of my experience. Say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about, hey, would you like to give to water solutions? Would you like to get to veterans organizations? Do you want them to be Christian veterans organizations, right? And so we just kind of, actually, we
But
spent
I don't know. Help
we
me. I mean, I don't know.
so we spent for hours constructing a plan and said, here's a straw man. Let's go try to execute on it for the first year and see how we do. And then come at the end of the year, see, how do we do? Do we feel good about it? Did we achieve what we wanted to do? Are you seeing the types of KPIs out of these ministries you want to see out of these ministries? Right?
I'll tell you, I sat with a guy just briefly, and I told him I was going to this conference, okay, for National Christian Foundations.
Right.
And he said, well, I'm going to be there too. And I said, I'm really going there because I just don't know where to
Yeah.
give. Now, I've given money,
Uh-huh.
okay, and I've continued to give money over all these years, but I'll call that generosity.
Right.
Then there's this piece that's philanthropy. It's,
Right.
in
Right.
other words, the bigger money,
Yeah.
right? And, so I write the few $1,000 check here and there or whatever, but now it's the bigger money. I don't know what it, and the guy said to me, oh, he says, that's easy. Tell me what makes you cry when you see it. And I said, I paused and I said, I don't know that anything makes me cry.
Mhm.
And what that came to realize is, again, I'm so far away from the constituencies that the nonprofits serve that I can't even answer that question because I was heads down doing what I do. So how do you get me over that hump, if you will, to get me moving that way, to start thinking about what does make me cry?
Actually, NCF has a process, and I actually borrowed some of that NCF process
Oh, good.
and
Tell me
working.
about
Yeah, they actually do. Part of it is identifying your passions. Okay, part of it is identifying. Here are
it. What does that
categories.
mean? What do you mean, passion? What is passion?
So
It's a nice word, but I don't get it when
he
it
asked
has to do with
he asked
philanthropy.
yeah, but he asked you what makes you cry. Okay, that's where's your heartbeat for sometimes we just say the gospel will help me. Is that evangelism, or is that, justice and mercy, or what help me? So we wrestle with the questions until we can kind of pull something out that starts to look like a framework. And that's really what we did.
And that could take a long time.
That could take, well, in our case, it took a couple hours, right, to do it
Oh, in
once.
2 hours, you can get somebody
I thought,
from 0 to 1.
yeah, I thought at least step one, right? And then you run down the road. You look at the end of a certain time period and say, how do we do? What did you like? And actually, I would say in the last couple months, I started doing things that were not on the original roadmap. And that's okay. He just called and said, hey, Curt, I'm starting to feel passionate about this particular thing. Can you go investigate something?
Okay, but here's what you did. You said, what are you trying to accomplish? Then you said passion. Then you got to how much.
Right.
How do you do how much?
Well, that's a very different discussion on an individual basis.
Well, how do you kind of, you got to move me along. I mean, you're going to ask me questions. And what questions would you ask me?
So some people have a real good sense, I want to give X away per year.
Oh,
and they may say,
okay.
I want to give away X, and I'm currently giving away 25% of X.
Got it.
Okay, how am I going to get the other 75% of X? Okay. Others may say, I read this book, Die with Zero, or what's the guy's, I can't remember the name.
No, I love that book. I can't remember the guy's name. He was an oil trader. Yeah, it was a great book.
He makes a great point that says, listen, what's going to happen with this money, right? And why don't you try to do something impactful now rather than wait till you die? So how do you plan out what the giving looks like? So you map in, I created this model with the investments and what the growth investments would look like. And then to get it down to, a certain level that this person wanted for legacy purposes, and then wants to give away everything else. So that then generated a number another way.
See, when you guys talk about Die with Zero, I mean, it was not, he was about experiences. Spend your money on experiences. So if you bring it into the giving world here, the philanthropy world, it's not only giving the money, but it's also gaining an experience. In other words, being with those people that break your heart. Or do you see a lot of that happening?
Yeah, the challenge with that, Charlie, is that at least I can think of two people I'm working with, they don't have the time to do that. They just don't have the time. They have the money.
They just want to write the check.
And they have the heart, and they want to be involved in those decisions. It's not like it's a blank check. They want to be involved in the decisions, and but they just don't have the time to do that. Right? I would say probably 95% of the time, the executive director will say, I'd like to meet with the donor. Okay?
Yeah.
Almost always. And the donors don't have time for that. Now,
really?
For the church, we do, right? Because we got the Kingdom Investment Board.
But really, I mean, you're asking the question, what are you passionate about? So if I'm passionate about this home that you talked about, okay, or sex trafficking, and that's one of those that I'm going to be giving a meaningful amount of money to, and he says, hey, I want to meet with you, I'm going to say no. You just told me I'm passionate about it.
The last meeting, Charlie, we approved 6 major contributions from one donor in one meeting.
And major to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Yes, wow. Significant sum. So you can't, that's one meeting, six opportunities that we're investigating and talking and making decisions about. They don't have the time for that.
So I don't have a single passion, or I do have a single passion, but I'm spreading it along among those types of nonprofits that are serving that constituency.
Right.
Is that what I'm doing?
That's what you're doing.
Ah, okay. So I'm not giving it all to one that I term
no.
Yeah. Really good.
You might be giving to 2 organizations that are ministering to communities with water solutions and the gospel. You might be giving 2 others that are doing justice and mercy missions in Central or South Atlanta. You might be giving to, an international ministry that's attempting to do something with pulling families together. Yeah, these are multiple ministries and multiple gifts. Again, it depends upon the size of the individual. Some of these are wealthy individuals that really would like to do something. Um,
So
and
then you say, okay, so when we get to the how much, you say, well, I'm giving X and I want to give 200% of X or whatever the thing is, right? And then you get to an allocation. So you say, well, here's the areas. Like you just mentioned, like the justice area, the gospel area, right? The water area. So fundamental sort of security and needs kind of. So I have these areas and then I do an allocation. How do you help me come to an allocation?
hey, it's our
So I got 100,000 to give away. How do you allocate it?
you were rubbing shoulders side by side and working through it, right? And I'm just a guiding individual. I don't. The answer needs to come from the donor, right?
Yeah, well, they say, oh, you've got 4 areas, it's 25 each.
And so I may say, if that represents the passion of your heart, okay. I might.
This is what I'm getting to. This
I
is
will.
what I'm getting to. You're
I
asking.
will challenge a few. I'll offer a few challenges, but I'm just there to facilitate individuals that have a heart to go do something with their money, and they just don't have the time to do it.
Now, okay, so then you identify, now you got the 4 areas. Now you're getting to the 4 areas of ministry, I'll say. Then you get to the nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they got the allocation. Now you got to kind of figure out, well, who?
Yeah.
Which ones, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to start presenting those to the donor,
Right.
a short list.
Well, first, I'll go do the due diligence, right?
Oh, so you don't bring them to them and then say, which ones do you like? Then I'll do due diligence.
It depends on the size, Charlie. That's a good question. So, depending upon the size, I might say, hey, you want me to work on this one or not? And sometimes I say yes. Sometimes I just do the work at a time because I know that they've already said, listen, I'd really like to do something that has this characteristic. And so I'll go ahead and do the due diligence.
So you'll find some nonprofit that
Yeah.
has that characteristic,
Yeah.
and you'll start doing due diligence.
Right. And maybe halfway through the due diligence, I'll say, hey, to the donor, take a look at this. What do you think? Right.
Well, then tell me this. So what do you find during the due diligence process?
A lot.
Are these mostly early stage type nonprofits, or like you said, I'm more
I would
VC than
say
I am PE?
they're early on their maturity. I find a lot of interesting stuff, Charlie.
Like, tell me, give me some examples because
Yeah,
I
I'll give you an
don't know.
example. I was on the phone with an executive director of an organization, and I said, I'm reading your website, and it seems to me you have 6 completely different, discrete, and independent missions going on.
My God. Okay.
Help me understand what's going on. And I was really hoping to hear that executive director say, you're right. We really need to focus. And we're really kind of moving these two aside and these will come in. No, his answer was, no, I think I'm going to hire a branding firm to help me pull all these discrete ideas together so they make them look better. That's just not a great answer.
No, right. I get
Not
it.
a great answer. So that would be a real live discussion I had recently.
What else did you see? What's another one?
Financial acumen is
Okay.
is either people are on top of it and they really know what's going on, or they don't.
And
Or
you can tell just from a phone call or from.
yes, you can tell. Yeah, you can tell. So if they're good, okay, they've also posted their financials and they've got rated by, say, Charity Navigator or somebody like that. Okay.
Okay.
So this is part of the due diligence. I will go
Well, there's
look at those
outside rating
outside
firms.
resources. I'll go look at those before I get on the phone with the executive director. And that will generate a lot of questions, right?
Okay.
So why, for example, is your marketing budget, ramping from 10 to 20 to 30% of your total revenues? What's going on, right? Because we as givers want to maximize the amount of money that we give that goes to actually impacting, the
Constituency.
recipients,
Yeah,
not
right.
for marketing budgets.
Right.
right? And so those sorts of things I'll learn and find out in the process and engage with the executive director or whatever they call it, presidency or whatever, um, and ask
One
questions.
of the things that is true with business, okay, is we know walking into a SaaS business, okay, in technology, or
Mhm.
walking into a distribution company, if you will, okay, we know that there is a what I'll call an ideal income statement, if you will, right? We know that if you're in a SaaS company like Salesforce.com, I think they were spending like 60% of total revenue was spent on marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and they were continuously unprofitable, but they
Mm-hmm.
said at any point in time, we can cut to 35% and be very profitable, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But generally speaking, you get to an on balance type of situation where you
Right.
know what your cost of sales is, you know what your gross margin
Right.
should be, you know what your S, G, and A should be as a percentage of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true in nonprofits also?
It is, and they can do something. I personally, I like to see something 10% or less for management and 10% or less for marketing. And they can go above the 10% for marketing if they're doing it for a short term purpose, right? I'm
Right.
really trying to,
Capital campaign or something
yeah,
like that.
capital
Yeah.
campaign, really trying to boost it. If you look back 2 years ago, you'll see it was this number, and I tend to get back to that, right? So those are I do have some numbers that I look at. Whether they're right or wrong, again, Charlie, I'm still learning, but that's kind of
What
the.
kind of due diligence do you do on the actual impact of their organization, on that constituency that we're
So
talking about? Because
that this is the
that's
part.
what breaks my heart,
I
right?
tell you, this is the part that amazed me, Charlie. There are some organizations, gosh, I'll try to not name them, but in Atlanta that are led by business people that know their KPIs down cold, right?
Yeah.
They really have them well done. And when you hear a guy talk like that, I know what my profit margins are. I know what my KPIs are. I know what I'm in business to do and ministry to do. That fires my rockets because there I'm listening. I'm talking to as somebody who knows how to execute, right? It's not just a fundraiser, right? They really know what they're really after, and so there's
So
some.
you like those guys.
I do like those guys because I
Yeah, but
really
what
feel like.
happens is those guys, you got the other side. Let me go to the other. So you got that guy, right?
Mhm.
You go to the other side, which is the founder guy,
Mm-hmm.
right? His heart just breaks for the constituency.
Yeah.
He doesn't have financial skills, he doesn't know that. But man, when he talks,
Yeah.
like it's like Bill Bolin, of the food bank.
Uh-huh.
When Bill Bolin talks about
Yeah.
people not having enough food to eat in
Yeah.
Atlanta,
Yeah.
he is unbelievably compelling.
Yeah.
Okay. It just breaks your heart when you hear it. Whereas you might hear the CEO, who is the new hire of it, it's so different because he
Yeah.
sounds more corporate now.
Yeah.
So I miss that passion, that on the
Yeah.
ground, how I got this started thing.
Yeah.
How do you get to that middle ground?
That's a great question because I think that on one end, I've talked to the founders who have all the passion, but their execution's just not
Oh, I
sharp,
get that. That's
right?
what I'm saying. You got that side, and the
You
other
do.
side is all execution, no passion.
I know you got to find the middle because you you got to find one that captures both. You
Wow.
got it. You got it.
And
And
you do that, you have a due diligence process for that?
I do, and I tell you, some of these I get fired up on that first conversation. Then I'll go do some homework. I'll come back for the second conversation. I'll go, wait a second, something's not adding up here, right? So that due diligence is part of flushing this out. And hey, I don't know that I can't say that I'm great at it. I'm just learning. It's part of a
Well,
journey.
what happens? Let's say you do a little due diligence on my ministry,
Uh-huh.
okay? And you come back after doing whatever you do, and I say, well, how's it going, Curt? You go, it ain't you. I'm not going to recommend you to my
Hmm.
donors. And I'm like, why? What do you do then?
If they ask the question why, I will answer it.
Ah, do they? No.
I'm not.
These were $5 million and up
I have
organizations. And
not
they said,
experienced it yet.
And how many touches do you feel you have? I know you're new at this.
Yeah, probably a couple dozen. So I'm not a couple of hundred.
So in 20 to 25
Yeah.
nonprofits that you said no to, you haven't
I
had.
should say no. Those are the amount I've touched. So how many no's is a much smaller number of that? Maybe a third of those we said no to.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So maybe a
Or
third.
how many did you say no to?
A third. Call it a third.
Okay, so
Well,
that's
some of these no's are no, not now. Some of these are no, but you got to go do some more work to prove it out. So there's only a very few that I've said no, period.
okay. So on the
Okay.
3 or 4 you said no period
Yeah.
to,
And
they didn't ask you
I've not been asked, yeah, that question.
what comes after the period.
Yeah, yeah.
How
And I
about
think what happens, Charlie, is they just have so many donors trying to reach out to them. They probably just don't have the bandwidth to reach out to all
how
those.
about that?
That's just my guess.
Okay, then what about this last piece that you mentioned in the churches in perimeter that you do with Kingdom Investment?
Uh huh.
You didn't mention here for these individuals that you're representing, okay, and helping. And that is the piece of accountability. What about that? So you finally get to the point. I'm going to go through the process again. What are you trying to accomplish? What's your passion? How much do you want to give? Let's do an allocation. Let's get to the nonprofits we're going to give to. We'll get past that, and they got past due diligence. The money flows. Is it over, or do I have accountability?
So, a couple thoughts. One, still early. Okay. So, I haven't even had a cycle yet to do that. Okay. Number two, um, the two I'm working with do not have the limitation of we won't give for 3 years. And in fact, one of them, we've gone back in year two and said, we're going to do a follow up. Okay. We liked what we saw. They generated the results. They give feedback, and all of these organizations will provide reporting as requested, right?
Now we talking about Kingdom Investment. Or we talking about the
A
individual,
donor, an individual donor, right?
individual donor.
So they're not bound by, I will wait 3 years. Okay. They can do the next year. And in one case, we have done a sizable gift in year two because we really liked we saw.
So
Okay.
that's part of your methodology to only give once every 3 years.
In the Kingdom investment, it is.
That I know, but I'm
Okay.
getting confused now.
No, no.
The individual donor.
They do not have that limitation.
Do you advise that they have something like that?
No.
So they want to give annually.
In some cases, yes. And in case we actually, the case I mentioned to you, we actually determined up front we were going to give X in year one and Y in year two. And so we
And then you
saw
were
what
done.
they did in year one, and we said, okay, let's approve year two.
And then we would be done.
Then we'd be done unless we come back and look and see what's going to happen. I have a
So you're only
feeling
making you're making mostly 1 year commitments,
that's right.
potentially 2 year commitments.
Yes, most majority are 1 year.
Oh, so that's the method of giving.
Yeah, so it's a little different than the Kingdom Investments approach, which again is tailored to the particular individual.
Method and commitment. I got it. Okay. Because every year, if I'm going to just give 1 year, then I've got to make a decision again. Wow.
Yeah.
So this is how often do you meet with these individuals? After they, well, first of all, how long does it take for them to get, let's say, to that first investment?
Well, I'm only dealing with two. The donor number one, they were ready to go right away. They caught the vision very quickly and wanted to go for it. So we started giving right away. Donor two's taking a while. Filled up the comfort, and they realized they got a family foundation, and they realize it's not operating well, but we're going to do something a little different. So
What are they, when you say it's taken a while? Okay, with the first one, they did it right away.
yeah,
With the second one, this is an example of one.
Right.
What's taking a while? What are the concerns from the donor side? What's kind of making them sort of shuffle their feet a bit?
Unable to get time to have that one-on-one 4-hour strategy meeting side by side where we can really sync. They're just testing and tasting leads I'm giving them and saying, well, that's not exactly
Oh, so
right.
you're giving them leads before you actually have a strategy in place in the
That's
field.
right. That's right. And that has not worked as well in terms
Yeah, that
of
wouldn't work
really
as well.
getting the engine going. So again,
Why do you
still
think that
early.
they're shuffling their feet on not getting to say,
So
look,
busy.
stake in the ground, you're going to do this or not?
They're so busy. We're
You think
talking,
it's just a busyness thing?
yeah, it's just, we're talking incredibly busy.
How about that?
Yeah, it's just,
Do they do this when they do this? Is it most of these individual donor things? Are these family foundations?
yes.
They are. Have you dealt with anybody or talked to anybody that's more individuals that don't have this sort of grand family foundation sort of situation?
Yeah, but they probably, they could probably just do execute this on their own. They're not used to, they're not used to having discussions about a six-figure gift to a single entity, right?
Really?
Yeah, they're not.
What kind of net worth do you think that people?
I don't know the answer. I don't know, Charlie. I
Because
don't
a
know.
six-figure gift doesn't seem like something that should be out of the ordinary. For a wealthy individual
Yeah,
that isn't wealthy enough to get into this sort of family
yeah.
office
I don't
thing.
know. My N is so small. I don't know that I have a really good answer.
Because that was one of the questions I had was, are they doing it just on their own, or are they doing it with their spouse? In other words, is it something where everybody's involved, or are they doing it with their children even?
Yeah, I think many would like to do that. It just gets tougher. You got more
The more
people
people,
involved.
the more busy, the more everything.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah,
had that same issue. If I
yeah,
started involving my kids, it's like
and
this thing could.
and you and I
It's
have
like
trouble
they
getting
putting together.
together. Then you got to have all those people together. It just gets very,
Yeah, it's like putting a conference on.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of it
I
gets to
think
be
that
crazy.
would be the desire. What I'm hearing, but in terms of the ability to execute on that is just so difficult.
Do you find anybody that will back up and change their mind? Hey, I'm interested. This seems to be like you could
Oh,
really help us.
oh
We
yeah,
want to do this.
oh yeah, yeah. And
What changes their mind? Take busyness off the table because that's a great excuse.
control, control.
Like, what do you
Um,
mean control?
I mean, maybe it's just personal accountability, Charlie. I say I want to give, but then when it comes down to actually giving and start executing a plan to give, maybe that's the problem. They want to control the money. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Or they didn't realize, I was going to give. I really wanted to give $2 million,
Hmm.
and now I'm thinking about it and like I'd rather give it to my kids. Or maybe I'm going to need it at some point in my life, or right.
I want to control the information. I don't know. I don't know.
So you don't know, you don't have enough touches yet
I
to
don't have enough.
know
Yeah, not enough time.
why people why people choose to do it and succeed at it
Hmm.
versus people who choose to do it or apparently choose to do it and then back up on that choice.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
You don't know yet. Okay, that's really.
yeah.
Have you gotten people that said, "Yeah, I'm passionate about this. We did the allocation. We got the whole thing," and they get to a point where they go, "I'm really not passionate about that. After we started giving and all that, that's not my thing."
Not enough ends to see that.
Okay,
You
because I could see how these things could change.
Yeah, but then we just change. We say, listen, we want to target this. It's not uncommon when you see worldwide catastrophes, disaster recovery, kind of spark an attention of they want to give on something, but then when that's natural catastrophes out of the news, that category might fall down.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah, that's the problem, right? As long as I'm in the media,
yeah.
then I'm worthy of contribution. But as soon as I leave the media, then nobody knows who I
Sad,
am.
sad but true.
Yeah, the next big need sort of shows up, and money gets attracted to that. It's sad but true. Yeah. What have you learned about as we're kind of rolling this down? I'm just wondering, like, what did you learn that sort of surprised you about donors?
Um,
Could even include the church, because you go in thinking one thing, right? From the
yeah.
outside, you're new to this field. What'd you learn?
I think it is. I think most people have a really big heart. Okay. But the reality is, you only have so many resources and you have to make tough choices. And
Ah,
that's probably the hardest, where something will grab hold of my heart and I'll do the due diligence and it makes sense. But, you know, there's so many great things out there. What are we going to invest and steward? Really, what are we going to invest God's resources? Because we're just merely stewards of his resources, right? But how do we steward well and realize we can't give to everything? And do you then try to spread the peanut butter thin across the entire piece of toast and try to fund a lot of things? Or do you really focus in on one or two or three and go big? Those are brutal questions that you really got to seek God's wisdom for how to choose.
do they choose more or less? Do they choose focus or do they choose go horizontal?
I
I want to
think,
put the peanut butter on more pieces of toast rather than on just two pieces of toast.
again, still early, but I think people want to they want to impact as much as they can. So I think the tendency for us as human beings is spread it out. I can affect more ministries, right, and do more things if I give a little less to each. But I think it's I think it's so independent for each one of these. It just varies.
What about people? Do they give in the name of their family foundation or do they give with anonymity?
Both. One of them started out doing Family Foundation and has switched to almost all anonymity now. Um,
Why?
you know, um, gosh, I could tell another story, but it's still confidential. Okay, where an investor is approached and they said, "Listen, I really wanted to give, and I talked to a friend on the golf course, gave me an idea, and I gave money, and now I get a phone call every week from that. I just can't shake that phone call." And so I don't want to give out more money and have to keep answering phone calls all the time. I don't have the time to do due diligence. I don't want to deal with the follow up recoveries. Can and you've got a process. Can you take it and do something with it? And I think so. There are different motivations for different people on how they want to treat this stuff.
So there isn't a so what would be the motivation of giving in the name of the family foundation? I understand now the motivation of giving anonymously. So one would be is I don't want to be contacted.
Right.
Another might be is it is God's resources. This is money that's just coming from God. I don't need any credit for any of this. We don't need our
Yeah.
name on anything, right?
Yeah.
So that's the anonymous thing. What about the I do want my name on it.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of, let me say it's those that are anonymous, their ego factor is so low.
Ah,
They just see it as God's resources and they want to steward God's resources. And so they don't even want their name on it, and maybe not just about contacting, but this is God's money, not mine. And I just love that sort of humility and thinking. Others, hey, I think about my own giving. Sometimes I put my name on it, sometimes I make it anonymous. And I
I
don't know
think
that I
this
have
is
a rhyme or
you
reason
never
yet
you
for
ever
it.
hear about that guy, the Irishman? He's died now, but he owned all the duty free shops.
Oh,
Never
really?
heard of
Oh,
him?
no, I haven't heard that.
Oh, he had. I came in contact with him through. I didn't. I never met him. Okay, but he owned all the duty free shops, like in the Western world or something. Okay, and it's just you would never know it to know the guy or to see him or anything. But he actually put money and started a small group in New York at the time. This was back in the early '80s with an investment company called General Atlantic,
Oh yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
His goal is to give away all of his money. And you know what? He did. So on one side, General Atlantic, made billions. On the other side, he was just giving everything away. And he gave it all away anonymously. People never knew where the money came from until much, much later. And he died basically with nothing.
Wow.
That was an amazing story to me.
Yeah, yeah.
So what did you learn? So that's the biggest story I've ever heard on anonymity, giving anonymously, okay? The other was what have you learned from about nonprofits?
You know,
Because we idolize them. We say, oh, they're so wonderful. They're doing all this good work. Now, you've seen a lot of them now.
right. And there is some amazing work being done by nonprofits. There is there is so many of them that are going out with the right attitude, dependence upon God, executing well, with tremendous results, and they and their reward. I got to tell you, they fight the battle every day. Hey, you and I have been in small companies. They're on these donor calls, and then they got to get on. They got to go execute on the business, right? They got to raise money and execute too. And
Yeah, it's
so many
hard
of
being
them
a nonprofit. You're raising money all the time, too.
all the time, right? And they just are fighting the good battle and doing so many neat things. The toughest one is for us to pick out the really great ones and not just the so-so ones.
What makes it like when you hit on one that you go like, there has to have these top three characteristics. And I know I got one now.
Mhm.
Okay. I might get disappointed as I go deeper in due diligence, but man, I know I got one.
I think, boy, great question. I would say one, they have a crystal clear mission about what they're trying to do, right? And they're probably only doing one thing, not six in a
Okay.
in a small company, right? They're really trying to do one, and they're focused in on it, and they're really trying to do it really well. It's just not just do a bunch of stuff. They're trying to do it really well and really thoughtfully.
Okay.
Um, and then I think they've got a clear set of KPIs of what they're trying to do, a clear strategy, a clear operating plan. You can see some of these come forward and there's like no operating plan. Let me just raise the money, give me the ball, and I'll run down the field.
Yeah.
And others come forth with a really good operating plan. Here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to hire 3 people. We're going to do this thing. We're going to launch in these 3 cities, and we're going to have service this many clients doing blah, blah, blah. They've got a real good plan and milestones on how to execute against it. So I think it's mission and passion and operational excellence that I'm really looking for.
This has been, it's been, been really good. So, but end with this though. What advice would you give to people that are thinking about moving from being generous to being philanthropic and moving from, I give X and now I want to give 4X every year? Okay. What advice would you give them?
Don't try to do this alone. Okay.
Okay.
NCF has a great organization that helps people give. There's these new jogs growing up, journeys of generosity growing up. There are a lot of organizations that are helping people take the steps. Some of them it's baby steps, some of it's big steps, some of it's vision casting, some of it's equipping. Don't try to do this yourself, right? I'm just one guy trying to help out a couple people trying to do this, and then I lean upon other organizations to learn from. You don't have to do this yourself. There's a lot of other people trying to solve the same problem, and there are people out there that can help you do it.
What happens if you do try to do it yourself?
I think go back to the starting point we had. Most of these individuals are high net worth individuals that are busy, busy, busy.
So they
Right?
know how to make money really well and spend their time doing it, but they don't
That's right.
know, and they
That's right.
don't know how to give it away, and they don't know how to give it away, and they get worn out on it and don't do it.
That's
Is
right.
that what happened? Yeah.
Absolutely. They don't have the time to do the due diligence. When I sit with them, tell them what I've done in due diligence, they go, I would never be able to do that. Right?
Yeah,
Well, you're right. You
I
wouldn't.
always got a kick out of Bill Gates. I thought, I really respected him because, you talk about a guy that was 724, right, in Microsoft. Then he decided, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to be I'm going to have the Gates Foundation and put my full time into that, which I'm going from operator, owner to investor. I mean, excuse me, to philanthropist, right? And he had to learn how to do that. And I loved the way on the other side, Warren Buffett, his friend, said, "Oh, great. I've got $35 billion. I'm just going to give it to the Gates Foundation because I trust you and I don't want to think about this. I'm just going to continue to make money at Berkshire Hathaway." And those were two ends of the spectrum, right? I thought that was amazing how that sort of went down.
Yeah.
But when you have to make the decision as an operator that now you're going to give away money in larger sums, you're right. It's you. I think we do need a team of people to work with to help us to kind of get there. It's just I can tell you for me, it's been very difficult. I'm not there yet. I'm giving away. I remember I gave away some pretty big sums, but I didn't do it with any strategy. It was just I knew I needed to give it away, so I did. And I look back and I go, I don't know, what was that about? I don't regret it, but because it's gone. I was like, okay, I did it. I gave it away. So, I feel like I honored God by him telling me you need to give it away.
That's okay. Hey, that's better than a lot of people just don't give it away at all. They just hold on to it, right? We got the barn doors with a cross on them, as they say, right? And so,
what is that?
The barn doors with a cross on them. They put all the stuff in the barn, right? Saving up for a rainy day and going to go to Christ's, kingdom work. But I tell you, that's the one thing I have loved working with both the donor side and the nonprofits, these ministries. All of them have a wonderful heart, a wonderful passion to go do something big for God's kingdom in this world and make it a better world because of it. I tell you, that's great stuff. I love doing that.
I think the other side of it, though, too, is people who haven't given, okay, because they say they're just too busy and don't kind of move into that direction. When they do decide to give, how it impacts them. I've been holding on for so long, and then I just started to release this, and it's like I'm still okay.
Yeah.
I'm still okay, and look, I'm making impact here.
Yeah.
And I'm still okay. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. Giving is something that's a real mystery to a lot of people in our world. It certainly is antithetical to we're supposed to be filling barns most of our lives, right? Or that's what we dedicate ourselves to, but not. But there's a great parable about the barn fillers, right?
Oh yeah. And the best thing about giving is it breaks the hold the money has on us. And we can worship money so easily. We can make it a counterfeit God so quickly, but yet giving it away helps us break that mold and focus on whose money is.
What does that do? Once that's broken, okay, what does that do to the person?
It's so much freedom. You don't have to worry about things that we used to worry about, right?
I love it. Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic.
Hey, Charlie, it's been fun talking to you as well.
See, you didn't even think that you would have a lot to say about all this stuff because you.
Hey, I'm still so early in this journey. I'm learning every day.
Well, thanks for doing this. If do you want people to kind of contact you or be in touch with you, or you've got enough on your plate?
I got enough on my plate right now.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing what you've learned, with all of us, and particularly for me. This has been very, very helpful. I mean, this is great. I love this methodology you went through of figure out what you want to accomplish, identify your passion or passions, okay? Determine how much you want to give. All right. Determine your allocation, determine how you want to give it. Right. And then to whom, and then, make sure you do your due diligence. And then there has to be some sort of accountability, I think, to this was something that when I just gave it away, I didn't have any accountability. So I think there's an emptiness there.
Yeah.
It's something I think there has to be an experiential piece to this, particularly for me, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm afraid of it because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want all those calls and be the guy, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, thank you. This has been great.
Great.
I love you and I appreciate you.
Thanks, Charlie.
And
Equally.
thanks for all these people who have been listening to the Charlie Paparelli Show. You're great too. We love
Great.
you too.
Take care.
Well, there you go. So that was it.
Good.